Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the 2007 film adaptation of The Golden Compass, based on a review I recently read. So strap yourselves in, because we're about to explore whether the movie really lives up to the magic and the complexity of Philip Pullman's original novel.
Yeah, it's always a challenge adapting a book like this. I mean, you've got these talking animal companions called daemons, the alethiometer, which is a device that tells the truth, and this powerful and controlling organization they call the Magisterium.
Oh, it's visually spectacular for sure. The review I read raved about the CGI and the special effects, especially when it came to the demons and the armored polar bears. But at the same time, it kind of hints that the film might have chosen spectacle over substance. Like it rushes through important plot points and kind of glosses over some of the deeper themes that Pullman explores in the book. The philosophical and theological stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common criticism when you're trying to adapt something for a wider audience. Like, take, for instance, the religious allegory in the book. That's kind of downplayed in the film. In the book, the Magisterium represents organized religion and its desire to control knowledge and suppress free will. But the film kind of softens that element, which some would argue weakens the story's impact.
So it begs the question, can a film be visually stunning but still lack the depth that makes a story truly resonate? It's like looking at a painting and appreciating the brushstrokes, but not really understanding the artist's intentions or the historical context.
Exactly. And, that makes me think about the director's choices here. Weitz, he's the director. He did an amazing job of creating a really immersive world, like the Arctic landscapes, the steampunk gadgets. It's visually impressive. But some people might argue that those visuals kind of distract from the main point of the story. It's like if the cinematography and the special effects are the dazzling brushstrokes, they still need a strong composition and a meaningful subject to create a truly impactful work of art.
Interesting. Makes you wonder if certain elements of the film were deliberate choices. Like, how they use certain camera angles or editing techniques? Do those things highlight the power dynamic between humans and their daemons? Or did they use those things to show how dust interacts with the world? Remember, dust is this mysterious particle that represents consciousness, at least in the books. These are the subtle things that an adaptation really needs to get right.
Yeah, for sure. And let's not forget the music. The score of a film can really add to the emotional and thematic undertones of a story. Did the composer use musical motifs that represent control or rebellion? Those are the elements that can elevate a film from just a visual spectacle to a truly thought-provoking experience.
Yeah, it's almost like there was a missed opportunity there. Like they could have really used those visuals to dive into the psychology of Pullman's world. For example, how do demons, which are basically external manifestations of a person's inner self, how do they influence a person's actions and decisions? I mean, that's ripe for exploration.
Totally. It's like they had this chance to make a film that was both visually stunning and a deep dive into human psychology, but they might have just gone for a more surface-level approach.
Speaking of missed opportunities, the review I read also criticized how the film handles dust. Dust is this concept that's central to Pullman's trilogy. It represents consciousness and free will. But the film doesn't really explain it that well, which is a shame, especially for viewers who haven't read the books.
That's so true. They really glossed over a crucial part of the story. Imagine if they'd used visual metaphors or symbols to represent dust and its significance, like, maybe swirling particles of light or subtle color shifts to illustrate dust. That would have been cool to see.
Right. Okay, so now let's move on to the cast. The review praised Dakota Blue Richards for her performance as Lyra, saying that she captures her rebellious spirit and her determination. Which makes sense. I mean, Lyra is kind of a classic hero in a lot of ways.
Yeah, right. And Nicole Kidman as Mrs. Coulter, talk about perfect casting. She really embodies that icy, manipulative elegance. She's both alluring and terrifying, all at the same time.
Nicole Kidman always brings such depth to her roles, like in The Others, for example.
Yeah.
That film, kind of like The Golden Compass, plays with those themes of perception and hidden truth, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of great casting, Daniel Craig as Lord Asriel, he's fantastic. Even though he doesn't have a lot of screen time, he brings such a captivating intensity to the role.
For sure. He's got a knack for playing complex characters, like James Bond, Both Bond and Lord Asriel, they operate in this morally gray area. They're driven by their own sense of justice and willing to bend the rules to achieve their goals.
It's so interesting how certain actors seem drawn to those kinds of roles.
Right.
Like they're drawn to characters who challenge norms and make us question our own beliefs.
Huh.
Oh, and we can't forget Sam Elliott as Lee Scoresby. He brings a lot of warmth and humor to the film, much like he did in The Big Lebowski.
Yeah, it's funny, both Lee Scoresby and the dude have this gruff exterior, but they also have a strong moral compass, and they're very loyal. Sam Elliott's really good at portraying those seemingly contradictory qualities in a way that feels authentic.
Yeah, totally. So they put together a really great cast. But the review I read argues that even their performances can't completely make up for the film's narrative shortcomings.
Yeah, I kind of get that. It's like having a beautiful cake that just doesn't taste very good.
Yeah.
You know, like the presentation's impressive, but it's missing something essential.
It seems like they had all the pieces. A visually amazing world, talented actors, and source material that's rich with philosophical ideas. But the execution maybe missed the mark when it came to translating those ideas to the screen.
It makes you think. What are acceptable compromises when you adapt a book into a film? Is it more important to be visually faithful to the book or to focus on the deeper themes? And where does the golden compass fit into all of this?
That's a great question. And it's one we'll keep exploring as we take a deeper look into the film and the challenges of adapting such a complex and layered story, especially for a visual medium.
Yeah, it's like they got so caught up in creating this amazing visual experience that they kind of forgot about the heart of the story.
Okay, so let's dig into those themes. The review mentioned things like free will versus control, the search for knowledge, and, the dangers of just blindly believing things. How well do you think the film actually explored those ideas?
That's where the film really struggles, I think. Pullman's novel is so complex, and it's hard to fit all of that into a 2-hour movie. Take the alethiometer, for example, that truth-telling device that Lyra uses. In the book, it becomes a metaphor for the importance of critical thinking, how to understand and interpret information.
It's like a symbol of our own inner compass guiding us towards truth.
Exactly, but the film doesn't really explore those ideas. Like, it shows us the alethiometer and how it works, but it misses the opportunity to visually represent that whole process of critical thinking, and the struggle to figure out what's true and what's false.
It's like giving someone a map, but not teaching them how to read it.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's that central conflict between Lyra and the Magisterium that represents the whole free will versus control thing, right? The film shows that struggle, but it oversimplifies the Magisterium's motivations, making them seem like they're just, pure evil.
It's like they shied away from those more complicated questions about authority.
Yeah.
And why people blindly follow orders. The stuff that Pullman really digs into in the book.
Right, exactly. It's like they missed a chance to explore the gray areas of morality. Imagine if they used visuals to represent that struggle, like shadows and light to show free will versus control, or maybe color symbolism to distinguish between those who conform and those who rebel.
Yeah, that would have been visually interesting and thought-provoking at the same time.
Exactly. They had that potential, but they maybe chose a simpler, more action-packed route.
Right, which leads us to the ending of the film, which, according to the review, felt really abrupt. And it didn't have the same emotional impact as the book's ending.
Yeah, that's often a problem when you try to squeeze a long story into one movie. You have to condense things, and you inevitably have to leave stuff out. The film has this hopeful ending, but it misses the darker, more ambiguous ending of the book. The one that makes you think about the consequences of your choices and the price of freedom.
It's like they ended the story before the curtain came down, so you don't see the full impact of what just happened.
Exactly. And that's where the HBO series, His Dark Materials, really shines. It embraces those complexities and isn't afraid to show the darker side of things.
Yeah, the review I read specifically compared the film's ending to the series ending and how the series handled it much better.
It's a good example of how different mediums can handle the same story in different ways.
So even though the film might not have captured everything from the book, it still introduces viewers to this really interesting world.
Yeah, it's like a taste of what's to come. If you're interested in exploring Pullman's ideas more deeply, you got to check out the books and the series.
It might leave you with more questions than answers. But that's not always a bad thing, right? It can make you curious and encourage you to learn more.
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about other films that deal with similar themes. Free will, knowledge, the dangers of blind faith. What comes to mind?
Well, Pan's Labyrinth is a great example. It's directed by Guillermo del Toro. It's set during the Spanish Civil War, and it blends fantasy and reality in a really cool way. It explores those same themes of choice, rebellion, and the power of imagination.
Oh, that's a great one. Del Toro, like Pullman, doesn't shy away from showing the darker side of humanity.
Totally. Oh, and another film that comes to mind is The Truman Show. It's a satire about reality TV, and it plays with the idea of free will or the illusion of it.
Both of those films, in different ways, challenge us to question what we're told and to think for ourselves.
It's a theme that's so relevant today, right? We're constantly bombarded with information, and it's more important than ever to be able to distinguish truth from lies and to make difficult moral choices.
And those are exactly the themes that Pullman tackles in his work.
It's no surprise that his stories continue to resonate with so many people.
So, even though The Golden Compass may not be a flawless adaptation, it's still a visually impressive introduction to this world, a world that makes you think about big ideas.
And for those who want to go deeper, the books and the HBO series are waiting.
It seems like we've come full circle. We started by talking about how the film's visual spectacle might overshadow its deeper message. But those same visuals, even if they're not always used to their full potential, can still draw you into this world, a world that makes you question things, you know?
And that's what makes a good story, right? Something that stays with you and makes you think about yourself and the world around you.
So for those who might be intrigued by the film but really want to dive deeper into Pullman's world, what would you recommend?
Oh, hands down, read the book. Northern Lights, the first in the trilogy. It just has so much more depth and nuance than the film. You really understand the whole thing with the Magisterium and dust and the alethiometer.
And for those who prefer something more visual, there's always the HBO series, His Dark Materials.
Oh yeah, definitely. The series goes way deeper into the characters and the world, and it doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of the story. Plus, it's visually amazing.
Yeah, and the cast is incredible. James McAvoy, Ruth Wilson, Lin-Manuel Miranda, they all give really powerful performances.
Pullman's story is timeless, you know? The themes of free will and knowledge, the dangers of blind faith, they're just as relevant today as they were when he wrote the books.
It's interesting, right? We started by talking about how the film's visuals might actually detract from the deeper themes. But maybe those visuals can also be seen as a gateway, you know? They draw you into this world, and then you want to learn more. You want to explore those big questions about human nature, truth, and fighting against oppression.
And that's what a good story should do. Make you think, even after it's over.
Well, it's been a fascinating journey exploring the world of The Golden Compass. We've talked about the film's strengths and weaknesses, the complex themes it explores, and, how it compares to other adaptations.
And hopefully we've inspired you to check out Pullman's work for yourselves. Whether you read the books or watch the series, it's a world worth exploring.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.